Hey guys, Professor Bill, Comic Book University, and Black Widow issue number 7. This was a spectacular book and a great example of, with all due respect, how to make a comic book. Let's get talking about who made the book, and we'll go on from there. Kelly Thompson is the writer, Yelena Casagrande on pencils. Casagrande and Elizabeth D'Amico does the inks. Jordi Belair does those gorgeous colors. VC's Corey Petit on letters, and Adam Hughes, does the cover art. There's a variant cover out there by Nabitsi Zitro and Jesus Abertov. Okay, so listen, without the book going downhill at all, the best part of the book is definitely the beginning. And if all of the books began like this, I would probably say the same thing. And that's important because the beginning of the book keeps on showing Natasha completely, and that's actually addressed in here, why she's sometimes called Natalia, sometimes she's called Natasha. So buy the book if you if you want to know more than just what I'm telling you, if you actually want the current writer to tell you, which is based off of Brevoort and Cebulski and all those good guys. Anyway, the idea that she had a kid, a biological kid, even if a lot of these memories are made up, they're still real. And a lot of it was still physical, actually functionally happened. And this is an actual child of hers. Now, the biological connection is not really going to be there as much as you'd imagine because she didn't actually give birth to the kid. Like there was no birth process, you know? This was, whatever. It was like a test tube kid. But at the end of the day, this is also coming from a woman who shouldn't be able to have kids, right? So I love the idea they keep on going. In this bittersweet, really sad, heartbreaking moment, I love that they're doing this to Natasha because you can't just have a kid and then forget about the kid. You can't just have a so-called love of your life that you're willing to have a child with and forget about that person. You can't. You know, you could try, but you won't be able to. So I love the idea that the books continue to begin with this, just to, if nothing else, than just to get it out of the way. That this is the stuff that's always going to be on Natasha's mind. Moving forward, though, Sarah, this new girl, this it seems like there's a lot of kids being trained nowadays. While that may seem kind of tropey, let's also remind you of this. Yeah, this is also kind of necessary. The next heroes, also the next villains. This is how you introduce them into the Marvel Universe. Mind you, let me remind you who Kelly Thompson is for a real quick moment. You buy her comic books if you're a speculator, because you never know what character she's going to put in there that is suddenly going to become a really important character. So this is crucial. This is crucial to understand if you're a speculator, not just a flipper, a flat out speculator. You're going to buy something that you hope sometime in the future is going to be worth a lot of money, as opposed to trying to double or, 20 times your money on a quick, flip. Kelly Thompson is somebody for the long term, right? Anyway, what do you call it? The relationship between her and Yelena. This can't last. Obviously, this can't last, but we hope that it does. And even though there are going to be twists and turns and they're going to go at it with each other once in a while, you can see the seeds of animosity between them, but at the same time, they're never stronger than when they're together. And I love the idea of that. I love that. You could see the White Widow, Yelena, coming into her own in this. We've always had, it was always supposed to be the idea that she was her own person, but we've also typically always seen that she's trying to, or she's trying not to live in Natalia's shadow, but that's a big as hell shadow to try and step out of, right? A lot harder than just walking out of the shadow of a building. I mean, like, this is a huge freaking shadow. And yet she's been trying, right? Well, in this particular case, we're seeing her not so much as trying not to cast her own shadow, but rather trying to cast her own light and succeeding slowly but surely. She's not so concerned with, I've got to make my own way and despite you or in spite you. It's more like I've got to make my own way because fundamentally I've got to make my own way. Who cares if you were first? Who cares if you were the older sister, so to speak? I still exist. I still matter. I'm still going to do my own thing. And my way, there has some validity to it also. You're not going to get better written characters than what Kelly Thompson puts down on paper. It's I just don't see it happening. These are extremely deep characters. None of this is fluff, right? For fictitious characters that could all just wipe away with the apocalypse, these are characters who we're going to want to remember in our long-term storytelling. And I love the idea that this is what she's capable of doing. Yelena Casagrande brings, we've seen her art style different than this before. This almost seems like she's taking a vacation, but that's not, it doesn't seem like that's necessarily the case. When I'm looking at what Yelena does here, it feels like she's trying to make a lot of this very dreamy. Like she's trying to make this something that you can't always tell. Is this real? Is this an imaginary thing? Right? So it's interesting to see that. At one point, we see Apogee's people. We get a name for his group, which he tries to keep secret, which is kind of important because it's not necessarily the name that he's granting to them or appointing to them. It's just the name that he calls them. And he seems to be somebody big on stage theater or playwriting because it works there, but it's also way too revealing, right? And Natalia's the type of person where you say the wrong thing. You say like, oh, come here or we're going to kill the hostage. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can take care of business if we have to, whatever. She's going to say something. I'm trying to think of an example on the fly and I can't. I apologize. But it's the idea that she's going to be able to tell by your speech pattern, by every single thing that you say, the standard, and then the thing that you kind of flip on or you kind of screw up on. And she's going to be able to tell, oh, so such and such and such. Like in the Avengers movie, right? Oh, the Hulk. So that's your plan. Gotcha. And then she just leaves. I got the information that I wanted, right? And I'm good. That's what she's going to be able to do. She just wants to keep you talking so that she can understand something. So when she hears something, when Sarah goes and says something that's just a little, she's like, Sarah, that's actually a big deal. Thank you. It's those little things. This is one of the reasons why the police will often, well, the good police back in the day, not now in modern day policing, this is why, especially in the cop movies, you'll see they'll say, I need you to tell me the story again. I've told it to you 3 times already, and I want you to tell me again. Because it's always going to be that little thing that you don't realize is important. But this time you just say it because whatever, and oh, okay, cool. See, that little tidbit, that changes things. Usually for the better, sometimes for the worse, right? So I love the idea that this is the way that Natasha's being written here. Guys, I could go on and I could praise this comic book for a day. I promise you I could. And I'm not just talking about this issue. I'm talking about this title, this run. Listen, if I had to make one complaint, if you forced me, twisted my arm, stop, to say something bad about this comic book, that's easy. I hate the delays. Oh, I'll sit here and I'll read the hell out of this comic book. It could be a month late. It could be, 3 months late. I'll still read it, but that's not the way that comic books were meant to be put out. That's just the way that whatever, editing, writers, artists, letterers, it's usually never the letterer's fault. They got a very simple job, But it's the idea that there are delays on this comic book, and it really pisses me off that there's so many delays with this. I just want the comic book to come to me. I want to know, it's the 3rd week of, the month. That means that the Black Widow comic book is out. Like, if anything is going to ruin the comic book's sales, it's going to be that. Also, the conjecture that, it's probably not going to be good as some SJW stuff. Nope. There's nothing SJW in here, which I love. With all due respect, I love. It's one thing to believe in people's rights, and I know that Kelly believes in people's rights for everybody. And if it were up to her, she would do whatever she could to just blast it out loud at a big billboard. But the problem is, everybody just kind of looks at a billboard and then ignores it and walks away. The idea that you would make something subversive. Subversive sounds mean, almost like the word propaganda. It doesn't have to be a bad word, but It usually has bad connotations with it. The idea is that when you make things not overt, you will, I promise you, have far better results with it. Far, far better results. It's one of the reasons why the X-Men comics were so important back in the day. And in a lot of the comic books, it's just comic books in general were usually so important back in the day because they were delivering important messages and they weren't being so, face forward. Look, guys, boom. Like yeah, and they don't beat you over the head with it. It's like, here's the thing. Maybe here's two things. Boom. Do you get it? Do you get it? Do you get it? If you don't, that's fine. One of these days you will. But for right now, you either catch it or you don't. That's the best way, in my opinion, to put together any kind of story, because otherwise it sounds preachy. And then you start going into the character of the person in question. Oh, you're telling me this and this and this. Who are you? Let's start trying to nitpick all the little bad parts that you've got. But if you just do something very low key, that's when you start to understand the message that's coming across. And since it doesn't feel preachy, it's I can either take it or leave it. If you believe that more people are good than otherwise, then you'll know that you've done your job. This is a really well put together book, and I know that a lot of that comes down to the editors as well. So, yeah, really well put together book. Really fantastic storytelling in every single aspect of the book. I love this book. Again, if it just came out on time, all the time, scheduled, it would just be so much better. It's the only way this book, I believe, could be made better. And that's really all I got this week, guys. Talk to you later. Like the video, watch an ad. Professor Bill, Comic Book University. Class dismissed.